Millions of people watched the Golden Girls believing they were witnessing something close to real friendship. It wasn't just comedy. It was comfort. Dorothy's dry sarcasm, Rose's innocence, Blanche's romantic chaos, and Sophia's fearless honesty felt like a family we visited every week. The chemistry looked effortless, as if the actresses must have lived those friendships when the cameras stopped rolling. But that warm bond existed mostly inside the characters. Behind the sets, behind the makeup, and behind the applause signs, the dynamic was far more complicated, especially between the show's biggest personalities. When the series began, Betty White and B.A. Arthur weren't enemies at all. In fact, their early relationship was almost neighborly. They lived close to each other, and according to B.A.'s son, Matthew Sachs, there were mornings when they carpooled to work. Imagine the two women sitting side by side, discussing scripts, talking about lines, laughing at scenes. They weren't forced together by managers or publicists, they genuinely chose each other's company. Rue McClanahan would later recall that if she invited B.A. to lunch and Betty wasn't included, B.A. often didn't want to go. That wasn't rivalry, it was closeness. But relationships built during a honeymoon period rarely survive the pressure of success. As the show climbed in ratings, something subtle began to shift. People in the studio noticed that tension wasn't random. It usually sparked around moments where Betty's comedic timing shined or where she received more camera reactions. There were whispers that certain jokes or punchlines originally meant for one character were rewritten to benefit someone else. And even if no one said it aloud, everyone knew programming executives and writers weren't blind. Betty White was becoming a fan magnet. Comedy became competition. The Emmy nomination was the turning point. Betty was the first of the four leads to receive one. That didn't mean B.A. was untalented. Not even close. Broadway adored her. Critics praised her dramatic range. But Oscars, Emmys, and Tonys aren't just trophies, they are symbols of status in Hollywood. They shift how producers see you. They shift how fans look at you. And they can quietly shift how your co-stars treat you. People close to the set remembered the mood changing after Betty's nomination, like fall weather gradually turning into winter. It wasn't an explosion, it was a slow frost. B.A. Arthur didn't respond to discomfort with passive smiles. She protected herself with blunt honesty and cutting sarcasm. She was a decorated Marine, real Marine, not a TV version. That background forged her into someone who didn't sugarcoat anything. On stage or backstage, if she had a thought, she didn't wrap it in cotton. Years later at a tribute event, Rue McClanahan stunned the crowd when she recalled visiting B.A. after her one-woman show. Rue and her husband offered their polite congratulations. B.A. thanked them, paused, and then, with the measured cruelty of someone who'd been holding a thought for a long time, said she adored Rue, and then used a harsh word for Betty. Not gossip, not hearsay. A moment from someone who believed she was speaking truth. Betty White never threw grenades back. For years, she kept silent about what her relationship with B.A. was really like. She would laugh in interviews and steer conversations toward her pets, her work, her career longevity. Only during her memoir tour, decades after the show ended, did she finally speak publicly. Her explanation wasn't dramatic or bitter. She said B.A. simply didn't like her. She explained that her cheerful, upbeat attitude irritated B.A., and she believed B.A. considered her annoying. Betty didn't claim that B.A. was cruel, just incompatible. Their personalities collided like two elements that simply couldn't mix. And personalities mattered. B.A. approached acting like a warrior who had earned her stripes. She was New York theater, old-school stage discipline, no wasted energy. Betty was television's golden child. She connected with people the way a radio host greets listeners. When filming paused, Betty didn't retreat to her dressing room. She talked to the studio audience, hugged fans, smiled at them like they were guests in her home. B.A. found that unprofessional. To her, every ounce of energy needed to be protected for performance. To Betty, energy flowed from connection. Neither actress was wrong. They were simply incompatible batteries that carried power in opposite directions. What makes this more tragic is that B.A. could be deeply compassionate when she trusted someone. Her relationship with Rue McClanahan is the perfect example. They first bonded during Maude, long before the Golden Girls existed. When Rue's mother died, She didn't receive a sympathy card. She received BA herself. BA invited Rue to her home, made a guest bed, and laid beside her in quiet support. No jokes, no lectures, no ego, just human softness. Rue later said that for the first time in days she felt calm enough to breathe. That wasn't the behavior of a cold, hateful person. BA simply gave warmth selectively to the people she truly trusted. That trust was not something she extended toward Betty. Their worldviews were too different. Rue eventually came to see the divide clearly. BA was theater, height, distance, projection. Betty was television, warmth, accessibility, friendliness. Betty chatted between scenes because she loved it. BA went silent between scenes because silence prepared her. When Betty bantered with the audience and came back smiling like nothing happened, BA saw that as breaking the ritual. It wasn't jealousy. It was philosophy. You can't ask a violinist to play like a drummer. During the height of the show, Rue defended everyone fiercely. In 1988, when the Golden Girls dominated week after week, she sat on Larry King's show and answered a caller who asked whether the cast got along. She didn't hesitate. She said everything was wonderful, the friendships were perfect, and the bond was real. The truth is she wasn't lying. She was performing another role. The role of a professional protecting the show's brand. Nobody wants to hear that the women who sold millions of viewers on Comedy and Comfort didn't like each other. Viewers don't want to see the strings, the bruises, or the egos. They want the illusion. But illusions crack. When BEA decided to walk away, the series ended, period. Not because NBC cancelled it, not because ratings collapsed, not because scripts failed. It ended because Dorothy walked out. BEA had multiple reasons. The writing had started to recycle themes. Characters who once explored complicated emotional territory were leaning into predictable humor. BEA also hated how often Dorothy became the punchline. Not every joke, but enough of them. Her co-stars brushed the jokes off as harmless. BEA treated them as disrespectful. She didn't want to be the butt of the joke every week. And there was the simplest, least dramatic reason of all. She was getting older. She was around 70 by the time the show neared its final years. Weekly television is exhausting. You aren't just acting. You're rehearsing, reshooting, memorizing, doing promotional work, adjusting to rewrites, and maintaining public image. She didn't want to grind her bones against a machine that had already given her everything. So she stepped away. She wanted to retire while she still felt proud. She wanted to leave before time forced her out. And she wanted to protect her dignity.